Hello my friends. My name is Bot Mathematician, and this is Holomancer.
We are very glad to see you all again, in the Guru Bashi arena.
Initially, we wanted to prepare a list of 5 new powerful decks for you, but we did not find enough new decks and archetypes in the meta game. Although the balance of power has changed, players prefer to play with old and proven decks, sometimes adding several new cards to them. This was even happening in the first few days of the release, when the game should have been demonstrating new diversity.
We decided to analyze the situation. To do this, we followed the meta for almost 2 weeks, studied meta sources, and took an analysis of decks from vicioussyndicate.com. On this basis, we prepared a list of the most popular decks. Let us share with you our findings.
What?
Let's start with a short look at the popularity of classes in the metagame.
Hunter was also popular before the release of the new expansion, but after receiving Zul'jin, interest in Hunter increased by another 9%. Almost a quarter of opponents are Hunters. Rogue and Paladin retained their popularity, but interest in Mage increased by 4%, which is up to 4th place from 8th. Warlock is ranked 5th. Although he was the leader in the past, he lost 7% popularity. The rest of the classes remained in their respective places.
And now let's talk about each class in more detail.
Hunter is the early leader of Rastakhan. Spell Hunter is the most popular deck in the game with 10% popularity, and a win rate of 56%. The numbers of Hunters fall at the Legend rank, where players are more likely to test and experiment with other classes. Deathrattle, Secret and Midrange Hunter can be observed in significant quantities, which makes the class quite diverse. Hunter looks pretty good, with 6 Tier 1 decks. Only Midrange Hunter's performance looks mediocre in comparison. After all, it doesn't abuse Spellstone, Zul'jin, or Cubes, which seem to be the finest ingredients for a winning strategy.
While the Hunter is the most popular class outside of Legend, Rogue takes over in Legend. Kingsbane Rogue has become a meta-defining deck with the addition of Raiding Party, and it is the most popular deck at higher levels of the game, although its win rate has relaxed to 51%. Odd Rogue becomes more powerful at higher levels of play, because the meta is much more favorable there, although it only has a little more than 1% popularity overall. The class also sees a lot of experimentation with tempo, pirate, even rogue and late game decks like Quest, Malagus and Deathrattle. Sadly, win rate results for other rogue decks are not very impressive.
The prevalence of Odd Paladin is probably a direct response to the popularity of the Hunter and Rogue, since the deck does well with everything that these two classes can offer. The deck doesn't play any new cards. That's pretty nuts. Even Paladin is almost as strong as Odd Paladin, and might become more strong in the future. Its win rate is 57%. One turn kill Paladin is decent, but its win condition is still slow, which can give it problems against opponents with faster and more consistent finishers. The Holy Wrath deck doesn't seem too promising.
Things look quite bleak for Mage. The higher you rise in the ranks, the fewer mages you see. This is due to the recession of enthusiasm for Odd Mage. It doesn't look as strong as it did on day 1, and its win rates has been continuously falling. So far, Big Spell Mage looks like a stronger deck for the class, even though it hasn't been refined at all, and still exists in small numbers. Attempts to establish meta decks are visible with Tempo Mage, the Elemental Mage and Quest Mage 2.
Warlock is very strong as long as you don't play new cards. Basically it plays the same 4 archetypes that were played during Boomsday, with the addition of Discard Warlock. Zoo and Control Warlock demonstrate a relatively large variety of builds that experiment with new cards, which is why it's performing so poorly. Even and Cube Warlock are exact replicas of their Boomsday forms. Cube Warlock is actually the best Warlock deck at the moment, as a meta breaker. As for Discard Warlock, it's only a tier 4 deck, with a 41% win rate.
The higher you go, the more druids you meet. While the class has seen several new additions, its archetype structure remains similar. The Undertaker Druid's win rate is being bogged down by new builds that are drastically inferior to the old Taunt variants. Token Druid, on the other hand, is even more likely to reach tier 1 because its refined builds are crazy strong. It's very likely that a Druid deck finds its way into number 1 sooner or later with both Taunt Druid and Token Druid archetypes. Malygous Druid basically refuses to play new cards, and its popularity gradually increases at higher levels of play. Mill Druid's win rate has suffered a bit. Gank Druid is a meme.
The Shaman is in the same place as in Boomsday. The most popular class deck is Shudderwock Shaman. Even Shaman is a powerful ladder deck that not many care to play. The number of Rastakhan cards in both decks is 0. The only new archetype is Aggro Shaman, with a noticeable presence. Other new ideas for Shaman look awful.
There are many different test variants of priest decks, and there are changes every day, so it is impossible to evaluate archetypes such as Combo Priest and Quest Priest. What can be gleaned from the data is that Clone Priest is in a similar spot to where it was in Boomsday as a serviceable deck, and Control Priest also has potential. It would be wise to wait another week to evaluate Priest before making significant conclusions about its prospects.
The warrior is at the bottom of the game. Again.
Victory or death! I must choose! I choose death! What now?
Poor Garrosh. Odd Warrior is the only hardened archetype in the current meta. Its win rate looks fairly decent at lower ranks, and sinks all the way to tier 3 at Legend due to the backbreaking matchup with Kingsbane Rogue and other crippling counters. Dragon Warrior is also observed, while the Rush Warrior is the most experimental class archetype.
We want to highlight the top 3 cards for crafting in several categories.
Among the legendary cards is the absolute leader Zul'jin with 14% popularity. Jan'alai, the legendary Loa for the mage who calls on Ragnaros the Firelord, is second. And of course Undasta, the only neutral legendary card that has found its place in decks like Druid, Hunter and even in Recruit Warrior decks, although it is not popular.
In general, we can see 19 legendary cards out of 23 in the meta decks. This is a very high figure, although most of them are used in experimental decks with a low win rate.
Among the epic cards, you should pay attention to Blast Wave, a versatile and powerful mage spell. Smalderthorn Lancer and Crowd Roaster too, but only if you like to play with dragons. During these first 2 weeks, players demonstrate complete indifference to the spirit cards. The most popular one, Spirit of the Tiger, has only 2% popularity, while others have less than 2%.
I want to say a few words about Rumble Run. Single player content is very important for me, and this is a very fun part of the game. Unfortunately, this time the fun did not happen for me. There is no story, interesting dialogues, empathy for the main character, and most importantly, what we have gotten is completely imbalanced. I don't want to go to the arena the second time. What are your impressions? Do you enjoy the Rumble Run? We created a YouTube poll. Find the button on the screen. Please vote and share your opinions in the comments.
Summarizing all the above. In general, 61 cards out of 135 are used in meta decks during this time, which is less than 13% of all cards. This is an extremely small figure for the new set at release. Every day this indicator is getting smaller.
Rastakhan's Rumble might be the least impactful set of cards we've ever seen. It can be concluded that the new sets of the Year of the Raven have too little impact on the game, and the new cards and mechanics are not very interesting to the players. In total, Rastakhan Boomsday and the Witch would cover only 27% of all other cards. This indicator is even less than the indicator of classic and basic cards. And this means that after 4 months, when we lose all sets from the Mammoth Year, boring Hearthstone awaits us. We will be forced to use those mechanics that are now considered to be ineffective or not interesting.
I think that Blizzard is already considering the possibility of nerfs if the situation does not change by itself and fundamentally new decks and archetypes do not appear. Unfortunately, we must admit that it is a failure. What exactly went wrong this year? Perhaps Ben Brode leaving the company, as well as other developers, or perhaps it is the lack of new ideas and competition. Is it just a coincidence? What do you think about this? We urge you to debate in the comments.
Alright, that's all for today. Thank you for being with us.
And special thanks to Chris for text editing.
We will meet in new videos.
Good luck.